Welcome, everyone, to the Improvly Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Dayna Gowan. So excited that you're joining today. And honestly, you're going to be excited that you're joining today because we have a fabulous guest on today talking all about using your authentic voice, strengthening your voice, and even learning to love your voice or accept your voice. We'll get into that more. But if you're joining for the first time, let me give you a rundown what this podcast is all about. I like to interview experienced improvisers, speakers, people who take improv classes just for the fun of it, and people who use improv in their daily lives and never really think of it as improv. And today's guest is an experienced speaker and broadcaster and reporter. Oh my gosh, so much experience here on this episode. And also, I'm willing to bet that she uses improv in her daily life as a speaker and VOSOT coach, and also as a grandma, too. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to our amazing guest today, Susan Murphy. Susan is based in Charlotte, North Carolina. She is an Emmy-winning journalist and broadcast voice coach. She has over 40 years of experience working in the broadcast industry, working a variety of journalist roles. I'm going to list them off, but a huge variety of roles here, from radio traffic reporter, TV news reporter, weather forecaster, radio talk show host, assistant dean at Hofstra University School of Communication, adjunct instructor, voiceover artist, and now a broadcast voice coach. Through her business, Susan Murphy VOSOT, she helps anchors, reporters, and speakers in general elevate their on-camera vocal performance and presence. And for those wondering what VOSOT means, don't worry, we will get into that and explain it because I didn't know what it meant either, not being in the journalist and broadcast world. But we'll get into that, I promise. And also, this is a fun share here. She has recently taken on the new role as grandmother to Murphy B. Please welcome the savvy, the succinct, and the sensational Susan Murphy.
Oh, Dayna, that was the nicest intro maybe ever. But you got one word wrong. I'm not succinct. I have the toughest time editing, and you'd think somebody in my business, I would learn how to edit. Not on podcasts, however. No, I just love the art of conversation. And that's what attracted me to radio those many years ago, because it is such a fun medium. And that's how I got my start in communications. So I am so happy to be here. You and I know each other from a previous life, and we just seem to be kind of on the same page with regard to both our businesses and our personal lives. So the fact that you and I have known each other for so long will no doubt facilitate this conversation going 3.5 hours, maybe sort of higher. So I am just so glad we could get together. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, of course, I'm laughing because succinct is not a word that describes me either. So we may be in trouble, or not in trouble, but this may be a longer episode. We might actually break the record for longest Improvly Speaking podcast episodes.
Okay.
And you know what? If we do it, yes, and let's go for it, right?
Agreed.
Well, and I'll tell our listeners a little bit about how we met. And I have a lot of guilt a little bit about how we met. And just to explain, so 2 years ago, Susan came on my previous podcast that I had with another co-host, and the podcast was called the AHA Method Podcast, Public Speaking in a Time of Distraction. And it was a great episode. Like, we even had it edited. It was ready to go. And it just, unfortunately, we never released it because at that point, I had wanted to go the solo route and do the solo podcast. And I promised there wasn't any drama involved. Like, Gabe was super supportive. And we also said, like, oh, we'll keep recording every now and then. We'll keep it up and running. And, things get in the way,
Right.
life gets in the way,
Sure.
and I just feel so bad that we never released that episode, Susan, because it really was terrific. You were terrific in it.
Well, thank you. But I also remember too, that might have been maybe the second podcast I'd ever recorded. This one
Okay.
is my 41st. So I think I
Wow.
might be a little better at it. Maybe succinct might get in there somewhere. If you say, okay, we only have 2 minutes to go, I might be able to wrap it up. So you're right. Life happens. And on the radar screen of life, it's a blip. And we all have lots of blips. And now we have this opportunity to make it up or reinvent. So it's all good.
I am here to make it up to you today, and to be honest with you, afterwards, after we had that conversation, we continued to stay in touch, and you actually did some coaching sessions for me. I said, "Hey, I'm not a broadcaster by any means, but I would like to strengthen my voice in doing the podcast and also just in my speaking abilities and such." So you were very generous in giving me some coaching sessions, and I gotta tell you, I still use the stretches that you gave me, the pre-performance routine.
Mhm.
I mean, you heard the intro. I feel like I had a pretty strong voice there, and that's really thanks to you.
And you know what I hear in your voice? I distinctly remember 2 years ago, there was very much of a raspy, sort of raw edge to your voice. That happens because breath is not supporting your speech. And
Mhm.
girl, you do not have that. So is your voice strengthened? Yes, ma'am. Go you.
Yes. And I can tell the difference too just by working with you. I think we did 2 or 3 sessions, and it was
Yep.
quick, like, hour sessions, 2 or 3 of them. You gave me one tip you had was to make Post-it notes that said "breathe," and put the Post-its places that would remind me to breathe and also to do my stretches and the pre-performance routine. I still have some of those breathe Post-it notes up in miscellaneous places.
That is so cute. I often tell reporters, and then take one to work, at whatever desk you work, and just put one only where you can see it. So that if you pass it, then you can kind of stop for a second and do some of the breathing exercises. Because the key to breathing exercises, as per my singing coach, is to do them in small increments many times a day, as opposed to, okay, 15 minutes before I go to bed, I'll do 15 minutes of breath work. And that maybe it would be helpful, but the idea is to integrate it throughout your day so that when you need to tap into it, when you're suddenly called upon in class or you want to say something in that meeting, it's like your body can, boom, go straight to drop your shoulders, breathe into your belly, bring up air and energy, and it becomes second nature. And that's the key to this. Any conversation we have with anybody is public speaking. So we
Mhm.
can call on it at a moment's notice if you want to use it. Not everybody uses it all the time, but I've also had clients who decided to change the tone and pitch, not change, because I like to say that I don't change you because that's wrong. I help you find your best voice, your best pitch. And people, mostly young women, have chosen to literally carry that through their everyday life. And it has made a big difference for a lot of them. And that's been a joy for me to see.
It has made a big difference for me, and like I said, I can tell when I'm using the strengthened voice and then when I'm not, and then also if I don't have time to do the 5 minutes pre-performance routine, which we'll get into a little bit on what that is if you're willing to share a little
Sure.
bit.
Hmm.
But even if I don't have time, if I have 1 minute, I can still do the inhale, the 4-second inhale, 6-second exhale,
Hmm.
and I can tell a difference right then and there just by
Yep.
doing 1 minute. So Susan, you've just been huge, and I know we've had kind of a 2-year gap. You've become a grandma, you've been busy during this time, but
Yes.
really the skills that you're sharing with people is very helpful long term.
And not only is it really helpful for your voice, it's really helpful for all of you, especially in the world as we know it today. if I had thought 15 years ago, this is what I would be doing, I probably wouldn't have gone, oh yeah, 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 that's it. I mean, yes, I've been a long time broadcaster. I love to share what I know. But what I know also just helps people survive the news business, and that's the bulk of my clientele. And it's tough being in that business now for a million reasons.
Mhm.
We can get into that or not, but these kids work hard, a lot harder than I did when I was coming up. And when I work with ministers or CFOs or nurses who are looking to improve vocal skills, they too are under a lot of pressure or stress, so that the breathing exercises, particularly, can help relax you or help you negotiate a busy newsroom, a busy emergency room, a church full of people. And boy, lately, it's a blessing to be able to have that, to know that you can kind of take a minute away, reduce the noise that goes on around you, and just spend some time with your breath, giving your body and your brain a rest. We all need a rest.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's so important, and I was telling you before we got on, before I record with almost all of my guests, probably 90% of my guests, I give them a minute to breathe, to stretch, to do whatever they need to do to just kind of go inward for a second, calm their mind, calm their nerves. Yes, there's a lot of anxiety when we record, but I gotta tell you, I think it really helps with recording these episodes with guests, and I mean, I'm biased, but I think all of my episodes have been really good with the guests, and I think the breathing routine or just that minute of reset goes a
Yes,
long way.
yes, and you're right, it's a minute of reset, that's a good way to put it. I still do it at stoplights in the car because it's the
Oh,
perfect amount
yeah.
of time to just kinda tune out for a second and breathe. It can't hurt you, and it's really just so good for you. And what it does, of course, is this breathing routine is it activates your parasympathetic nervous system.
Mhm.
Runs alongside your regular nervous system, but your regular nervous system sends out hormones and chemicals that send you into fight or flight, cortisol and adrenaline. Your parasympathetic nervous system, which is headquartered, as I like to say, in your gut, it goes to longer, farther parts actually in your body, never to any organ that it sends out chemicals or hormones. And its job is to calm down your central nervous system. So when you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, your blood pressure goes down, your heart rate goes down, and there's this magical focus that your brain achieves. And it can happen in as little as 3 breaths of any kind of rhythmic breathing. And
Oh.
the folks who did yoga 2,000 years ago figured this out. And it can be any sort of rhythm. As you know, I do breathe in on the count of 4 and exhale on the count of 6, but it can be anything you can manage. I've had some clients who kind of can't do 4. It's just too hard for them, so we'll do a 3 and a 5 for them. So, as long as you make it rhythmic and you do it a minimum of 3 times, boom, parasympathetic nervous system activated. And your likelihood of then beginning to speak, thinking about your natural pitch comes from the bottom of your diaphragm, and pitch and air and energy, to me, it's all the same. And a lot of women, especially, don't know they have a natural pitch that sits so low in their bodies. And I've spent a
Mhm.
long time investigating why. One is gender. When we're children, we all have the same equipment when it comes to vocality or vocalness. Puberty hits, and hormones take a man's vocal cords, enlarge and lengthen the vocal cords to the size of a quarter. Girls, our vocal cords stay the size of a dime, which is so funny that
Oh.
the instrument with which we speak to the world or enables us to speak to the world is the size of a dime.
S
There you go. That's
Wow.
so
Yeah.
little.
Yeah.
And they're also men, their Adam's apples kind of get into this mix, and that also has to do with the pitch of their voice. So they have an obvious marker for when their voice changes, as we say. It doesn't happen for girls. So we don't know it. And you know, girls, when you get any girls together from the age of 11 to the age of almost 40, oh, so oh my God, I can't believe it. And then it really doesn't come down
Yeah.
much from that. That's just girls. That's just girls. It's how we play, it's how we communicate. So we have to actually be shown sometimes that no, you do have a weightier, more, I'll say, elegant, authoritative, natural pitch that I can just show you how to activate, which is why I say I don't change you. We don't invent
Mhm.
anything. There's nothing false about what I show you. It's something you've had all along. You just don't know it. So that's what I show men and women to do. In men, when we work on breath and pitch, what happens to men's voices, and it's invariably with sportscasters. And it took me forever to find the word to use to describe a man's voice when it gets, I call it your, it's not quite strained, but you're stretching. And what happens is you tighten up all your muscles and you're doing the sports and you're up here and blah 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 blah, and you think you're on Sports Center, blah 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 blah. Blah. Hold on, strap it back down. And I have worked with so many sportscasters who, as soon as I say to them, no, not Sports Center, they're like relieved. Oh, I don't have to do that? Where their pitch stretches and strains, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing for anything less than a minute, but anything over a
Mhm.
minute, it's just hard on the ears. And it's actually why I got into this business, is because after I moved to Charlotte a few years ago, I would be switching around news stations and I would see young reporters who could shoot great video. Their writing was okay. They're young, it's all right. And they looked fabulous on camera. And then they opened their mouths. And there was a pitch or a vocal quality to their voices that was just makes me want to breathe for you, makes me want to say, lower your shoulders. Please just lower your shoulders.
Mm,
And I thought,
mhm.
when I was coming up, not that we paid attention to voice, but we all went to radio first. It's just what you did. Now that doesn't happen. They go straight to television, so they don't learn anything about their voices, which radio gave you some expertise or at least some practice doing. And you would learn from the folks at the radio station. And a lot of it was sort of trial and error, but it kind of worked. So by the time you got to TV, you knew more about your voice than when you got out of school. And now it's all about the technology. Nobody teaches you about your voice. And I just think that the voice is so important to how we communicate and navigate and how the world navigates toward us, that why wouldn't you want to speak in your best tones? Why wouldn't you want to be able to communicate on a level that everyone understands, that everybody appreciates, that gives other people the impression that you want to give of yourself? And a lot of that comes from your voice. If your eyes are the windows to your soul, your mouth and your voice is the front door.
Ooh.
Yeah, I invented that a couple of
Yeah.
years ago and I'm often quoted. But and I think it's true because people are going to judge you by how you sound.
Mhm.
Is it fair? No. Is it gonna
No.
happen? Yes.
Mhm.
So you might as well, there are some people who say, well, it's just me. You're just gonna have to take me. That's just who I am. Okay, I don't think that's just who you are. I think you're hiding behind something, but that's just me. I have learned in the 3 years that I've done this coaching There is a ton of psychology, which you know too, behind what you and I do. And the
Yeah.
psychology that either you explain or expose or introduce to a client. I kind of had no idea till I waded through it all. Ton of psychology, for example. So why don't girls use that voice? Well, one reason is goes back to their childhoods where depending on the kind of family unit they had and how, I mean, we're all dysfunctional. It's just a matter of degree. Um,
Mhm.
Either they weren't appreciated, they weren't being heard, their brothers got all the attention. They were one of 4 and they were in the middle and nobody really paid attention to them. They were bullied in school. Their voice was too loud, too high, too this, too that. Be quiet. It doesn't matter. I don't care what you're thinking or saying. I was working with a minister couple of years ago, and we were talking about that because I was having trouble kind of getting her to access that natural pitch. And when I can't do it, say in the first 10 minutes, I automatically know where to go. And that's back to how you grew up. And we were talking about that, and I tread very gently. And I was talking about maybe not being appreciated or listened to or what have you. And her eyes filled with tears. And she said, "Oh my God, in my house, in my family, that's a generational thing. No women were listened to or thought to be valuable or thought that anything they had to say mattered." And then she said, "And I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I am not
Yeah.
going to allow that to continue. It stops here."
Mhm.
And her sermons came across with so much more power, with so much more resonance, and I'll call it listenability. For her, it was life-changing, and it's because I tapped into something that just normally doesn't come to the surface. At least she's not aware of it. It happens subconsciously, not consciously. And that's, I've come to learn, somewhere between 15 and 20% of the women I work with.
Oh, yeah. I mean, probably more, I would say. I mean, it's so powerful too. I relate so much to what you were saying. And also, I think to the flip side of girls maybe having to be quiet, but then also girls are cute and they're the cute ones and they've got the cute little voices. And that's where they're like,
Yep,
"Hi, can I have this? Oh, I would
yep,
so love it." And you get taught that like that works, right? That
yep.
cuteness works for you. And while you kind of grow out of that, I think hopefully as you get older, maybe not.
Maybe not. Particularly in
Yeah.
relations or relationships with men or romantic partners.
Mhm.
Let me tell you, there are some girls I've worried about in terms of what that was for them. And it shakes my breath away a little bit. But it's when you can show someone that they own and have and can use this beautiful, powerful voice, step into it, it gives them a whole new outlook. It it almost surprises them that they can do that. Of course you can do it. You just needed a little push. So my job is to walk with them as they step out of the voice that served them well, as you pointed out, got them what they wanted. But now
Mhm.
it's time to do this another way, a more appropriate way, a way that doesn't rely on cuteness or sweetness or breathy or sexy or whatever.
A confident way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. 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 Because I often say confidence begins with your breath. When you can make a strong statement, when you can puff up just a bit and come out with what you believe, what value you bring, what uh, the life experience or whatever that you are sharing, you know, the rest of the world needs to hear it. You can't hide behind it. Your family needs it. You know, we could talk about this kind of communication in families or in romantic partners or whatever,
Mhm.
but just professionally. So working with one client, she's in Australia, and I love her to pieces. She as a CFO, and she's also running for office in one of her local precincts. And she was the only woman in the C-suite now in both companies that she has worked for, and she was just needing that. How am I going to rise above the male? I don't even know what you want to call that.
Norm, I don't know.
Norm,
Yeah.
there you go. Yes, the male
Yeah.
norm. And she took to it really quickly. And once she started figuring out the baby steps, oh, those steps became bigger. And yeah, she was a joy to work with. And sometimes, and when I work with news people, they often have a little voice in their head that says, okay, you're on TV now. Sound like a TV reporter. Oh, God, please don't.
Mhm.
Please don't do that. 25 years ago, that was fine. It's not fine now. So to remove the voice from their heads, which I guess you work with also, the voice that limits you in your head.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a whole exercise called taking off the jacket of judgment, and it's
Oh,
kind of just it's a visualization. I didn't come up with the name, but I've kind of made it my own visualization piece of just imagining that you have on this heavy coat or jacket, and then you take it off slowly, and then you feel the weight of that jacket, and that is supposed to symbolize the jacket of judgment that we hold for ourselves and for others, but mostly ourselves. We are our own worst critics for
true.
sure. And then, we visualize throwing that jacket away, throwing it far, far away, and then just feeling the lightness that we have, shoulders dropped again, and that lightness that we have not carrying that judgment around in the world and allowing ourselves to just be ourselves. And, some people are like, I don't get it." It doesn't work for them. But for some people, including myself, it really does help to just visualize that jacket is off. I'm here as I am, as I'm supposed to be, and I'm enough in this conversation.
That's right. I'm enough. That is a wonderful exercise, removing the jacket of judgment. And if we just do it for ourselves, we make bigger waves in the world. The jacket doesn't hinder us. Brilliant.
Mhm.
Brilliant.
I'm just taking all this in because, as you know, when this episode comes out, baby girl will be in the world, hopefully thriving and crying and eating and enjoying all the baby things. But I am 8 months pregnant as we're recording this. So I'm just taking all this in. And once I learned that I was having a girl, too, because I was convinced I was going to have a boy. I just convinced myself in my mind, I'm like, my motherly instinct is telling me that I'm having a boy. Like, I just convinced myself. And
Okay.
then I am having a girl, and the minute I found out, it's like the switch kind of flipped and was like, "Oh, I'm the model now." And not to say, like, with boys, like, I wouldn't be a good role model and stuff, but it was just knowing that I have a girl, it's like, I'm the model here, and, like, things that I say, she's gonna pick up on, and in my family, there was a lot of shy people, people who didn't like body weight and body image was a big
Mhm.
issue in my family and the women of my family,
Okay.
many generations, and
Aha.
I carried that a lot with me, and so, we're trying to break the cycle here. We're trying to just let her know that she's enough. I tell her almost every day while she's in the belly that she's enough the way she is.
Yes, you are, baby girl. You are enough. And I'm secretly hoping she's going to be born on my birthday, July 27th, because there are not a lot of us born on, I don't know why that is, but I always like to meet a fellow
Hmm,
July 27th. So, but
okay.
as long as she's born healthy, happy, and to a mom and dad who will love her and cherish her and bring her up to be her best self, all
Mhm.
by herself. And let me tell you, I got a granddaughter who came out of the womb. First of all, I would not have believed this had I not been there. But on her first day of life, she could hold her head up. What
What?
baby does that?
Wow.
Yeah. I saw it.
Strong girl.
Strong girl in many ways. She was kind of a chunkier, not just shy of 9 pounds,
Wow.
22 inches long. I mean, she was a big girl, and she comes from parents who are not big, so we think it was just a gene that skipped. And let me tell you, she is strong in neck muscles. She is strong in her opinion. I'm not so sure almost 3-year-olds should have strong opinions, but this one does. And let me tell you, she is a challenge to her parents and to her grandmother because we're doing things a little differently. My daughter and son in law are very much into gentle parenting.
Mhm.
Mhm. No, I'm not. No, not happening.
It's
No,
different generations,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
I watch and I don't jump in, but when Murphy and I are together, and you'll notice Sweet Murphy has my last name, and I did not see that coming. When I
Oh,
was introduced to this granddaughter,
that's right.
"This is Murphy B." M
That's so
Murphy
sweet.
Murphy Murphy? Yes, Murphy. Claire named it for, our side named her for our side of the family. It was an homage to
Oh.
my father, and because Claire and my dad had a great relationship, and anyway, so Murphy B is quite the young lady, and she's now in preschool, and she is smarter than the average bear, and that can work against you when you're that young because
Mhm.
she's very opinionated. Her language skills, her teacher said we could put her in kindergarten and she'd do just fine. A little scary, but her parents also have been doing flashcards since she was an infant.
Wow.
Did it pay off? Yes. But flashcards as an infant? Every time they'd go out to dinner, flashcard, but she liked it allegedly. Anyway, I'm not so sure. But so she and I have a different sort of relationship. And I think children need to know where they stand and where you stand. And gentle parenting blurs that line. So I'm not a fan, but so be it. I think
I just
children need the structure and they need to know how far they can go. And I'm not saying, you know, beat them, or I don't even necessarily think timeout is a great idea anymore. But
right.
gentle parenting blurs the line. Just my opinion. And girl, you're going to get a lot of opinions when that baby girl
Oh,
arrives.
yeah. Well, and I have no idea what style I will implement yet. We'll get there when we get there, but just hearing that, I worry for her being this very vocal, opinionated three-year-old that she'll get labeled as bossy, right? Or those adjectives that young girls get told, and then that dims her light, or she takes
Oh,
it to heart and it's like, "Oh, I'm gonna dim for others," and hopefully it sounds like her parents and you are, on the track of not letting that happen, or maybe she won't even let that happen,
there you
but
go. You've just summed that up. But okay, that's us with baby girls. Let's talk about us with baby boys. You have to
yeah.
raise boys. I remember when Claire was, I think, my daughter, in maybe preschool, and I was hanging out with some of the moms, and one of them, her name is Jane, she said, "You know what? We need to raise our sons better to allow
Mhm.
our girls to shine." And I've never forgotten that. And I do think parents of boys need to be as vigilant and as aware as parents of girls, because if the boys are going to continue the old boys machismo club, then that does label our girls as not assertive, aggressive, not
Mhm.
straightforward, bossy, as you point out. And that has to stop. And I realize that the equality equation has allowed girls to come up. And I'm not saying boys have come down, boys just need to see through a different lens. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, and we're all a work in progress. I think every generation it gets a little bit better, and also by breaking these cycles that hinder and dim our lights and, really doing the inner work on ourselves and, helping others. I mean, it goes a long way. And I want to backtrack a bit and just talk about your career a little bit as a broadcast journalist. I listed off your whole variety of roles that you had. And I mean, really, you said you started in radio, you've been in the newsroom,
Mhm.
you've narrated documentaries, you now coach people. Do you have a favorite role that
Oh
you've
my.
you've held, or is it too hard to pick a favorite role?
It's like asking to choose your favorite child. And
Yeah.
invariably, I have been so fortunate in my professional career to honestly always having done something I enjoyed doing. I like to say I've had more career reinventions than Madonna because I was always willing to pivot, always willing to see where the next big thing is, or I loved filling in a hole, find a problem and solve it. And I've done that twice in my life. And the second time is this voice coaching. To my knowledge, I am one of the few broadcast voice coaches. There are TV coaches, don't get me wrong, there are lots of them. But they usually are in larger companies and they will look, at your hair and your makeup and the this and the that. And I mean, I'll do it, but I work with your voice, your writing, and your storytelling. And that's it. So I love being able to find the hole and fill it. Growing up the way I did, I had two parents who were very busy working. So my sisters and I raised ourselves, kind of. So we had no parental applause, and kind of our job was just to stay out of trouble, especially with my mother. So we worked our way into the world the way we were going to work it. I went the most traditional route. My two sisters did less than that or differently than that. And when I got into radio, I had graduated college at the age of 20 and a half. Oh, because I raced through, because I had to get a job. And then when helped start the Shadow Traffic Network New York, I had worked at Shadow Traffic Philadelphia. They were going to start that office. I was the program director. And I went to New York and I had to meet with every program director of most of the radio stations in New York City. And I distinctly remember taking those meetings and I would walk in and the men would go, uh, oh. And the look on their faces was, what is this 25-year-old girl doing here?
Mm. Mhm.
And but this was also 1979, 1980, 1980, I guess.
Yeah.
And my job was just to be as professional and knowledgeable and the expert that I was on traffic reporting. Yeah, you might be a program director at a New York City radio station, but you know diddly squat about traffic reporting. Hi, I'm her. Yeah. And so just always being aware of I was often the only young woman in the room just to be professional at all times. Now, the fact that the voice you hear now is pretty much the voice I had when I was 25, very little difference.
Wow.
That helped. I didn't never had a girlish sound. I never had growing up in Philadelphia, never had that mid-Atlantic accent. This is the voice I use. And maybe it was subconsciously that I developed a stronger presentation skill because I had to.
Yeah.
And it's not like I was one of many and, "Oh, could I pipe up or could I add something?" No, I was it. So but it had to have been subconsciously, I don't remember doing it consciously. And so my whole life, I've just been the professional me at all times, and that has worked. And I look at the young women coming up today. Oh, here we go, on my soapbox. And I see young women who remind me not of me as a girl, because, I'm growing up in the 70s and, feminism and equality and blah, blah, blah. I had that in spades and it was all over you, all over in pop culture. And I am woman, hear me roar, the whole thing. Not now. What happened? the young women coming up, it's like we didn't exist. What happened? Did we not show you, teach you? Did you not learn? What's going on here? I hear, oh my gosh, horrible stories in newsrooms about sexism and misogyny and, oh, let's not even talk about anti-LGBTQ, or let's not talk about natural hair for women of color. I mean, please stop it. Just all of you stop it. And I sometimes, my heart sinks when I think I grew up on the shoulders, or not grew up, but I stood on the shoulders of a Jane Pauley and a Barbara Walters and some of those early women who fought very hard to become successful in the broadcast industry. And somehow the torch never got passed, and I don't know what happened. I don't know. And that makes me sad sometimes. There's still very much a good old boys club. And maybe it's true, and I'll bet you people in lots of other industries would say the same. But 40 years later, that shouldn't be true, but it is. So as we circling back to raising our children
Mhm.
to understand and appreciate and value who we are for what we are.
I mean, it's so fascinating, and I don't know anything about the broadcast industry. I watch the news here and there. I try not to, honestly, sometimes just
Uh-huh.
because sometimes it's scary. It's
Yes.
sensationalized a lot of
Yes.
times too.
Yes.
And I'm curious for you. And you said sometimes people have broadcast voices, right? Like, all right, we're on the air, and then they go, "Good evening, welcome to Channel
Yeah.
4 News," right? And as an improviser, I've certainly played
Right.
reporters, like, you
Right.
have the, like, reporter trope of,
Right.
like, putting on that broadcast
Yeah.
voice.
Mhm.
Is that common, or for you, do you just speak in this voice most of the time, and that's how you really can curate that authentic, confident voice?
Bingo. Yes. I always speak in this voice to curate my natural voice to what it is I'm speaking about. And doing a lot with public television, and I did tons of on-air fundraising with them, and that was all improv. Most of
Yeah.
the time, we are not looking at prompters. So you just learn there are certain phrases that you can always come back to pull you back into what your job is, which is to raise money. But I've learned that in every job I've had, when you can express the basics really well, that allows you to sometimes go outside of the basics, knowing you can always come back to it in terms of speech, in terms of whether I'm speaking to a Kiwanis club or whether I'm hosting a fashion show or whether it doesn't matter. There are just things that I can draw on from my experience, that the stories I've told, and you learn what works and what doesn't. But of course, the job of improv is to stretch you into areas where, oh, you've never had to do that before, but you can always call on the times and the circumstances of your life to work into that. And I've always relied on that, just to be 75% what I know and I'm comfortable with, and 25%, all right, I'm out on a limb here. Yes, and.
Mhm.
So, and it's age, and it's, that I've been around the block before, and I've had the same industry my whole life. Most people don't stay in the same industry, and particularly, you know, the generations behind me, they don't wanna be in the same industry their whole life. There's some comfort there, in terms, and for me, luck, because,
Yeah.
let's talk about ageism, let's talk about, but so I've just got so much of a well to draw from that is in the same industry that I have found to be really helpful. So whether it was TV, radio, a producer, a narrator, an on camera, whatever, there's always something there for me to go to. But then I also don't have. I worked for a little while as a PR person for a politician. That, thank God, lasted not too long. Well, that
Oh,
that was
that's
just a
tough.
stopgap
That's
measure
tough.
back in my day. So I've had a couple of ancillary experiences, but Not a lot. So I don't know whether that's good or bad.
Okay, so behind the scenes question for you from someone who just on the outside looking in. Whenever news reporters come on, even if it's like a really breaking news topic or something crazy happening in the community, they still seem so calm, right? It's the voices, they're confident. There's a lot going on, there's chaos, but
Mm,
they're calm, even if
mm,
they don't have the answers. And I think of when something hits, a natural disaster or something hits in the community, you turn on the news first to get answers. And we expect the reporters to have answers, and they don't have answers, but yet they compose themselves so well. Even in the event of not having answers, they'll still hold that space to say, "Hey, we're on it right now." And so they're very calm, they're very confident. How do they develop that? Is that excessive training, strong vocal control, all of the above?
divine providence? I'm not really sure. I personally, I was out of the news business on 9/11, and I often
Oh,
wonder how
yeah.
I was in New York, but not in the news business, and I often wonder how I would have handled that, but I didn't have the chance.
Mhm.
I was on the air when the Challenger, the NASA space crew exploded,
Yeah.
and a plane crash on Long Island back in 1991, 2, 3, something like that. And that so I've not had a lot of those experiences, and I've recently worked with some young journalists who weather disasters are far more likely to happen to these kids than it ever did to me 40 years ago, thanks
Yeah.
to climate change. So they're reporting on tornadoes, they're reporting on flooding, they're reporting on, for a while there was snowstorms. It's just a you dig deep and you know it's your job to stay calm and give information, and you just do. You can collapse later. I'm working with one young
Mhm.
woman who in Kentucky was sent a couple of 100 miles away to cover some tornado damage there. So she was staying in a hotel. She wasn't even going home every night. And we had to decompress from that because there's trauma in what you see and what
Yeah.
you report on. And when you look at the reporters who have been around the world in Ukraine, in Palestine, in Israel, in the Sudan, it's everywhere. Wildfires.
Mhm.
It's traumatic, but there is just something about knowing doctors first do no harm. It's kind of the same thing. I'm here to help the patient. I'll deal with me later. Newscasters, I'm here to help my viewers. I'll deal with me later. And you just do it, and you do realize later, and you might, be running into the ladies' room. And I was doing some radio work for the Associated Press when the school shooting in Connecticut, the which was
Oh,
one of the first ones, in the name of the
is it
town is
Sandy Hook?
Sandy
Is it
Hook.
Yeah.
And I was on all afternoon, and I was not reporting live, I was reporting actually from my house, getting information in and getting reports out. And I got through all of that, and by 5 or 6 o'clock when I just sat and cried because
Mhm.
of what I just had to talk about. So, you if it doesn't affect you, there's something wrong with you, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
So we just learned that our first responsibility is the viewer, and we can't fall apart. We have to bring you really important information, life-saving, life-keeping
Mhm.
information. So we just do it.
I was thinking about that with just you coming on and also just, watching the news and seeing how calm and composed they are. There are brief blips of vulnerability though that the reporters will show. They'll say we're thinking about the victims and the families involved or all those who are involved in this. Our hearts go out. There is a brief bit of vulnerabilities, and it's not that their voice even breaks really, but it's just, like, they do go off script a bit to just say, "We're thinking about you," kinda thing, and I do think that goes a long way too, and especially in events like that, and I just think about vulnerability a lot because I talk about that in storytelling and presenting and, when you're sharing and being your authentic self, you have to be vulnerable. And so I just wonder that balance of giving life-saving information and breaking news and also having a bit of vulnerability, and it's gotta be very hard on reporters. I don't envy them.
But the storytelling, you're right, demands that. And I think 9/11 was the day that just happened. And the world has changed a lot since 9/11. And
Mhm.
the news business is in a lot of trouble. Um, in terms of people not watching, in terms of people getting news elsewhere, in terms of people believing non-news, fake news, misinformation, disinformation. Our industry is in turmoil. And let me tell you, I don't even know what it's going to look like by 2025. Another story.
Mhm.
But my point is that viewers do not want to be lectured at. It was okay
Yeah.
before 9/11, or even Walter Cronkite on the day Kennedy was assassinated, and that was the first live television event ever in 1963, and then grew from there. It brought TV news to prominence. If you are shut off, if you are an observer who is just watching and not reacting, people don't want that anymore. Nope,
Yeah.
doesn't fly. They
They don't
want
want
to learn,
robots.
they want to be involved. They would like more of a conversation as opposed to an anchor reading at them. And a lot of stations
Mm.
are now putting anchors out in the field more often. A lot of stations, I mean, learning to read a prompter, you could train a monkey to do, but most stations will not even think about giving you any anchor experience until you've done 5 to 10 years of reporting, to be out in the community, to know what your community issues are, to have walked with those people, whether they are, mothers of children who were gunned down in gun violence, or whether they were, political prisoners, or whether they were the mayor, or it doesn't matter. You have to be out there and you have to know and appreciate your community to be able to report on it and talk about it with real intelligence. And sadly, let's go back to it's all about the technology. Young reporters don't really have the time now to develop sources, to go to coffee with the police chief, to do things that would really allow them to get more into their communities so that when big things or small things happen, they have more resources, understanding. They have more people to go to, and ways to get more information. They just go to things, shoot what's there, report on it, and go home. And, it was more like that when I was coming up, that we would do that. It's not that way anymore, and I think the TV industry has to take a good long look at itself, and I don't know what the answer is. The commercials that we all watch, there are far fewer and far between. The ad dollars are not there, so newsrooms have cut back. It's a vicious, vicious cycle.
So what
And
I'm hearing Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and after the 2024 elections in
Oh,
November,
yeah.
November 6th, the morning after, life is gonna look a lot different no matter who wins, and it all changes on November 6th, and I don't know what it's gonna change into.
What I was gonna say to some of that, what you're saying is it sounds like some improv skills are needed of reporters, right? And certainly you have the teleprompters, you have your script, and also, let's get into first your whole business. I know we've been talking for almost an hour, but your business of Vosot. So can you tell us what Vosot is first, and then we'll talk a little bit of improv too, and
Good
maybe
idea.
how that works in conjunction? Yeah. 'Cause I could
Vote
just listen to your stories all day about newsrooms because 'cause I'm so removed from that world, and it's just so fascinating to hear, but tell us what Vosot is first.
Sure. I called my company Vosat. I was looking for a clever little name, and I was thinking, okay, well, I'm really only going to work with TV people, so I'll call it Vosat, which is broadcast shorthand for voice over sound on tape, which is what, if a reporter goes out and shoots the video of a story, and they'll take one little sound bite from what they got. Then they come back and they write a script for the anchor to read. If the reporter is going to do the story, that's called a package. If
Mm.
the anchor, if what is written and shot is for the anchor, that's called a VOSAT, because the anchor will read up, there's a little soundbite up, and then the anchor wraps it up. That's called a VOSAT. So then I would branch out and I would work with other people and they'd go, VOSAT. So now it's a little behind the scenes in television, voiceover, sound on tape. So yeah, that's the name of the company. And there aren't two of these companies. So it kind of stands out, VOSAT. Yeah, I only know one VOSAT. So yeah. That's it.
So that is a big thing with script writing, and I know from our previous episode, but please elaborate too, writing short sentences, having that strong voice when you have that sound on tape.
Right.
Short sentences thing goes a long way for me. I am a very wordy, lengthy writer,
Me too.
and then when you go to read it, it does not translate like the written word. Yeah.
Because you haven't written it like you speak.
Mhm.
You should always write like you talk, maybe slightly elevated, maybe slightly bolder. I always say, my reporters and anchors too, you are experts and you are educators. So you have a wide range of viewers, intellectually, in terms of schooling, whatever. So you write in short sentences so that everybody understands. You write in short sentences because with short sentences, you can easily get to the end, take a pause, and go on in short sentences. Short sentences land harder. You come across as much more authoritative, as you really know your stuff when you use short sentences. And those pauses that you put between those short sentences are good for two reasons. One, you, the speaker, get to take a breath, drop your shoulders, breathe into your belly, and your brain can go to the next sentence. But pauses are really for the listener or the viewer, because I need to catch up. I need to catch on. You've been working that story all day. You know it like the back of your hand, and I've never seen it before. So don't go too fast. Don't run those sentences together, or I'll go, I'm not sure what she said. And so many young writers, you get the press releases about whatever event you're covering, and they just lift sentences from the press release, and those sentences are written for print. So, of course, they're
Mm.
long. It's like me trying to figure out the latest Israel Hamas thing. And I go to the New York Times and I look at the story, and that first sentence is one run on clause after clause. By the time you get to a period, you're 4 column inches down. And that's
Yeah.
great for print because I can go back and read it 2 and 3 times. On stage, on television, I can't read it again or play you back. My famous expression, write it like a 5th grader, deliver it like a college professor. Short sentences are the key to getting people to understand things. And because we use short sentences, and this has been going on for years, the media, they dumb down everything. No, we don't. We don't dumb it
Mm-mm.
down. We
Nope.
make it accessible.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So it's actually an art to be able to write a full story in short sentences and get across important information. That's an art. I dare you. Yeah.
I know in the public health world and health literacy side of things, they say to write print materials like on a 6th grade reading level.
Huh.
And so in grad school, I had to go through and read a pamphlet and highlight all the words that were 3 syllables or more. And that kind of, if there were a lot of those, that signaled that it was a higher than a 6th grade level. Now that's a print material, certainly we're talking about sound and saying and reading these things, but yeah, to that point of just dumbing down, no, like, the world is, we've gotta make it accessible and inclusive for all to understand. So that's very important.
And you had said earlier, and I forgot to pick up on it, the use of short sentences in terms of, making people really understand what it is you're talking about. And in improv,
Mhm.
we always do it as we would tell our grandmother or tell our mom. And so in a live shot on television, when a reporter has to bring you the facts of a breaking story, let's say, they need to just, okay, get a handle on this, people. Again, you're here to educate me. And remember, I haven't seen this before or heard of it before. So just settle in and give it to me as best you can without stumbling, without umming and ahhing. And if you use words that are too long, or if you run all those sentences together, you've not done your job. You haven't transmitted the information to me in a way that is best absorbed. So, improvly speaking, in terms of a live shot, it's a very hard skill for reporters to master. It's not always easy. You know, they say about journalists, we're just high school theater kids who can't sing. So, a lot of them do have a little bit of acting background. So, they will draw on that, which is a good thing. And that's true about 50% of the time, by the way. I was a high school theater kid who could sing. So, we we sort of fill the need. Our brains understand it. We just hope it gets to our mouths that way, because being live on television is a daunting kind of thing. There could be tens or hundreds, or not hundreds, tens of thousands of people watching you. Let me tell you, if I ever thought to myself, "Oh yeah, and I'm on the air and there are 150,000 viewers," I would die. I would clam up. I'd have nothing to say. So,
Well, in this age of technology, if you mess up, you're a meme now. I mean
there's that. Thank goodness the internet didn't exist in my early days on television. OMG. And that's another thing that reporters, and I guess everybody, faces who are in some sort of public spotlight. Let's talk about stealing your voice and running it through artificial intelligence and making a
Mhm.
commercial sound just like I don't know who. That's A. In terms of any news reporter has to usually have a Facebook page, or really mean people can tell you awful things through your Facebook page or through the station's Facebook page. The stalking, yeah, sure, I was stalked coming up. Every woman broadcaster
Ugh.
was. Every. And it's still true. It's now easier, actually, to get those horrible, mean things from both men and women, in terms of how you look or how you sound, or
Mhm.
worse.
Jacket of judgment fully on for a lot of social media people hiding behind social media, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I'm so grateful I wasn't around 35 years ago. So
Mhm.
grateful.
It's tough, yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
And I was thinking of the short sentences thing just to relate this to improv, certainly. It all is related, public speaking and improv. I mean, improv is everywhere, but
Yep.
I can relate in my improv classes, they have three-line scenes when we are first starting out to where we just say who, what, where. We establish the who, what, where. "Hey, sister," usually we'll say, like, a name, "let's go get mom a gift for Mother's Day." So who we are, what we are, where we are, and you wanna establish that in the first 3 lines, ideally within 1 sentence apiece, because otherwise people will go on these huge, long diatribes of, "We're siblings in Utah, and we're gonna go on an adventure to find our mother a gift." And it's like, just give one piece of information, give one gift at a time. Let's build this scene one line at a time. We don't have to write it in our heads and then have it act out on stage because that's not going to happen with another person. They're going to inevitably change it in no biased way or no malintended, but it just
Uh-huh.
changes when you're working with someone else. And so you have to be adaptable and also not hog the scene, like, kind of a bit of balance and go with the flow and give and take. And so, anyway, the short sentences really benefit improvisers too, as I just went on a whole long rant about the need for it.
But it was very well done, and I could picture it, I could see it. Good oral, AURAL examples. Same thing for newscasters, double anchor teams. Oh my goodness, either it works or, oh gosh, it doesn't. They talk over each other. Nobody gets a word in edgewise. It can be awful depending on, so you have to learn to anticipate rhythm without knowing, well, no, you do know what the next person's going to say because the prompter's right there in front of you. But if you are going to ad lib or talk around something, you better get your signals straight, people, because it can be a train wreck. And that too is a skill that takes time to develop, how to work with a co-anchor. And working all those years in public television where you often had a co-host, you you learned quickly.
Susan, I want to give you and us a quick break because afterwards we're going to come back and talk about taking care of our voices. So I'm going to
Yes,
give us a break so that we get some water, take care of our voices, and then when we get back, we're going to talk about strengthening your voice and caring for your voice.
love it.
We will be right back. All right, and we're back talking with Susan Murphy of Vosot, and we learned what Voisot Voisot Vosot means. What is it again? Remind us.
Voice over, sound on tape.
Yep. So not Voisot, Vosot, voiceover sound on tape. Yes.
Right.
And now I want to get into, I know we've been talking for an hour, and again, Susan just could get into this, the behind the scenes. We could do a whole nother episode of the
We
behind the
could.
scenes of the newsroom and just the industry in general. But I do want to ask you, while we have you on, just about strengthening your voice and taking care of your voice. It's really important in roles like this where you are talking a lot. But as you said, we do a lot of talking in our day to day with our families, friends, coworkers, relationships, speaking
Sure.
up at meetings and sounding authoritative, but also that balance of approachable and authoritative too.
Mhm. Yep.
And so, any tips to share with those listening right now, how to strengthen our voice?
Oh, lots. Yeah, absolutely. If you rely on your voice, teachers, singers, uh, broadcasters, there are lots of industries where voice is important. You owe it to yourself to take really good care of your instrument. And some of the simple things you already know. Rely on hot tea with lemon if your throat gets sore, or warm tea, I should say. I often tell my anchors and reporters, even when you're not sick, always have like a lozenge or a hard candy in your mouth to help with the saliva production. And then as you swallow and it goes past your vocal cords, it doesn't go through them, obviously, or you choke. But it helps to give a tiny little bit of lubrication to your vocal cords, which, speaking of your vocal cords, and we did talk to you about how for a guy they're the size of a quarter and for women they're the size of a dime. The outside of your vocal cords, the only way I can describe this is truthfully, and that is they're kind of covered in slime. And that
Mm.
slime needs to be hydrated. And it happens kind of two ways. And the most important way is from the inside out. You need to be drinking 64 ounces of water a day to hydrate your skin and, make sure there's enough blood volume in your body. And you have to hydrate from the inside out. I will tell anchors, you need to consume 2 liters of water 2 to 3 hours before you go on the air. Now, for morning anchors, that's a pain in the butt. But yes, at one
It's a
o'clock
lot.
in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, you should be drinking a ton of water. And because it takes that long to hydrate your body and it also gives you time to use the bathroom. So do that every morning. You should be drinking tons of water before you go on the air. The other way your vocal cords are hydrated is when we breathe through our noses when we're not talking. When we breathe through our noses, your nasal structure humidifies that air that is going to pass your vocal cords. So that's nice. When we breathe through our mouths, no such humidification. So you're drying out the slime because we're breathing through our mouths. So you really have to be careful about that. So when you get a sore throat, if you're coming down with laryngitis, if you have laryngitis, do not whisper. That's the worst thing you can do. That can just really aggravate
Mm.
the problem. I call it speaking under. You kind of, all I can say is speak under the laryngitis. Force that air and energy to come up from the diaphragm and speak under the laryngitis. And actually, when you have laryngitis, you shouldn't speak at all.
Yeah.
I walk around with a pad of paper. I'm a wedding director at church, and a couple of months ago, we're at the rehearsal the night before, and my laryngitis was so awful. I had the pad of paper, and it said, "I have laryngitis. Ask me yes and no
Oh my
questions."
gosh.
Yeah, we got through it. It was fine. So, you also need to have a really good doctor. And how do you find that really good ear, nose, and throat doctor? Because you use your voice. Here you go. Wherever you are, particularly in a larger town, you find the local opera company and you call them and you either talk to the director, or you talk to the PR person, and you say, "Who do your singers go to?"
Oh, wow.
There you go. That's who you go to for your throat. If you don't have an opera company, you call preferably a teaching hospital. You go through the PR office and you say, "I need your best ear, nose, and throat doctor. Just between you and me, who is it?" They'll tell you. So that's a good thing. So you get yourself a really good ear, nose, and throat doctor who can follow your progress or for a while there, I was plagued with sinus infections. Well, that was no fun, and it prevented me from doing what I do. So I had to be watched. And yes, that's how you're going to get steroids. And no, you shouldn't do it. But if you got to talk, you're going to get steroids. So be that. So you take care of that voice because the dear Lord only gave you one. And sucking on lozenges, drinking tea, obviously, before you go on the air, before you give a speech, 2 to 3 hours, please do not have dairy. Do not have yogurt. Do not have milk,
Mhm.
ice cream,
I've heard
because
that, yeah.
yep, it helps in the production of phlegm and you'll cough your way through that speech. Uh, Try to stay away from spicy foods for the same reason. Not to say afterwards, knock yourself out. Go have all the spicy Mexican tacos you want. Just don't do it before. Mm, the lozenges, tea, honey. Honey is really good. It does have antibacterial, yeah, properties that can be helpful. I've been known to get there's a brand of I want to say one kind of whiskey that has honey in it. So like when it's like the weekend and you can put a little of that in your tea, you're feeling a whole lot better. Lemon water is very good to have. Some people say not to have caffeine. I'm a big believer in caffeine. It gives you energy. If you're sensitive to it, fine, don't do caffeine, but I'm a big believer in caffeine. So, those are some of my rules that I pass along, and if you're just vocally tired, stop talking. Just tell your family.
Yes.
I work with the Game Show Network, and I have
Oh,
worked with
cool.
their hosts, and my job is to keep their voices healthy because they tape 6 shows a day for 6 weeks.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's a lot.
That's
That's
a
so
lot.
much.
So, I'm all over them about breath work, and yes, you are going to strain your voice, there's no 2 ways about it, but let's keep this to a minimum, and when you go home on the weekends, you're gonna say to your family, "Mm-mm, ask me yes and no questions." You gotta do it. You gotta do it. It's your instrument.
You're gonna love what I ate right before we got on.
What?
I
What?
had a glass of milk and a cheese wheel
Oh, no. And you're not
because
talking.
yeah, and
Okay,
because I am pregnant and I ate earlier, I'm not sleeping well, so I just get up whenever I'm
sure, sure.
the legs get crampy, I'm like, "Alright, I'm just gonna get up." So, I got up early and I ate breakfast early, I'm like, "I need to eat a little bit before we record because if I don't have food, like, I get kinda spacey feeling, that brain fog." And so
Yep.
I'm like, "I'm gonna eat a snack." And so I
You
had milk and cheese all on the don't list, but
but
I
you
think
sound
better than
fabulous.
nothing
You sound fabulous, but
'cause I did
alright, so
my
you got away with it.
exercises.
Yeah, yeah, you got away with it. Good job. But you were also drinking a lot of water, so that probably helped too. Keep that
Yeah.
phlegm from doing its thing. Yeah.
Well, and I did reach out to you earlier in my pregnancy because I was noticing that I was struggling so much when I would have to give presentations or even leading meetings. I facilitate a lot of meetings. I'm a wellness consultant in my full-time job, so I'm leading agendas and kinda going through items. And so I am doing a lot of talking, and it's not the presenting that I would love to present, but I'm doing a lot of talking, and I was finding, like, "Oh my god, I can't
Running out of
catch
breath.
my breath."
Yeah.
And part of me, the ego side of me was like, "We've conquered this issue. We've gone through this, we've conquered the nerves. You are a speaking coach of all things, and you're struggling." I had to do a bit of release and just say, "Look, there is something in my belly, in my uterus that is changing the way my
Yep.
lower half, my middle half,
Yep.
everything's
And even
going
your
on.
upper
My
half. And
diaphragm is really
sure.
affected." Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, your diaphragm is a muscle that is attached to the last ribs in your rib cage, and it's a
Mhm.
long muscle. And when it gets filled with air, it blows up like a balloon so that when you fill the diaphragm with air, it pushes both down and up to make that sort of elongated balloon shape. And sure, when it's filling up, it's meeting resistance from your other organs that have been pushed up by this lovely life growing within you. You have also doubled, not doubled, but you've gained blood volume. You're heavier than you were. There's there are hormones coursing through you that in levels that you've never had before. So all of that is going to play into how you breathe and how you walk, and it does stifle expansiveness because you're making room for somebody else, not your diaphragm. So it just is what it is, and you have to work around it best you can. And what better excuse to be running out of air than a little one? So it won't be this way forever.
As I got bigger and I did a few in-person presentations, not a ton, but when I was in person, my joke was starting off because I knew it's probably obvious, but then people would be wondering, so then would they be listening to what I was saying or just
Right.
wondering the whole time? So I just my joke would be, "I had a big breakfast and I am 6 months pregnant, 7 months pregnant," whatever. And at
Well,
least then there's, "Oh, okay, cool. I thought so, but I wasn't gonna say
right,
anything. Now I
right.
can listen to actually what she's gonna talk about."
That's so funny. I had a big breakfast, and I'm 6 months pregnant. I love it. That's and it makes people laugh too. Anything to break the ice or to get a smile. Sure. Brilliant.
Well, and then so that's taking care of your voice. Now, having a stronger voice, I mean, we've kind of talked about a few things. Having shorter sentences, which I admittedly struggle with for sure, which the shorter sentences can help with not trailing off the cliff. So if you're talking for a while and ranting and then you kind of run out of air and then it's like, "Oh, like," and then
What
I'm
was that
that's it.
last syllable? I'm sorry. What did you say? Yep. Yep, yep, yep.
Mhm.
Falling off the cliff, yeah. Well, first of all, every time you do breathing exercises, you are strengthening your diaphragm. It is a muscle. Opera singers, men particularly, because of how they rehearse and the tones that they have to reach, they literally expand their girth by 1 to 2 inches over the course of a career because they've exercised that muscle so much. So that's A. So that's strengthening your voice. But the Kardashian sisters have done more for unsupported vocal fry, when they talk like this and blah, 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 blah. That
Mhm.
is simply unsupported breath, or it's unsupported speech. There's not enough air under there. So when you think about my 7 words, drop your shoulders, breathe into your belly. When you first start the practice, when you think about breathing into your belly, picture that air and energy going all the way down to the bottom of your rib cage. Speaking is then becomes your exhale, and you imagine that air and energy traveling from all the way down there, coming up past your vocal cords, makes a sharp left turn, and then out through the mask of your face. And you do it. I always say public speakers need to be bold, not louder, bolder. So when you think of making your presentation bolder, putting more resonance in your voice, a vocal coach that I'm friends with on LinkedIn, whom I admire greatly, her name is Claire Fry. Follow her. She's great tips. She did this thing not long ago, what I thought was brilliant. You'll know you're speaking with great power and air and energy and resonance behind your voice. When you talk, put your hand at the top of your chest, just under your neck, the top of your rib cage. And when you're speaking, really put your hand there and you should feel vibration. And that way, you're
Mhm.
speaking with resonance. If you're going to speak like this, and this is how it comes out, you know what? There's no resonance there at the top of your chest. Look at that. That's one way to bring out power and energy, and your vocal cords are going to vibrate appropriately and not get all that raspy, edgy, no air behind it sound. And that's how you fix that.
I think for the speakers, hopefully you have a microphone so that way you don't have to super project to a big room. Certainly, you still need to have that resonance in your voice,
Right.
but if you don't have the luxury of having a microphone, sometimes you're like, "I have to talk loud," and I'm kind of limiting my voice here for the microphone, but I have to talk louder to reach people, but actually you need to use that diaphragm in order
Right.
to project
Yep.
too.
Exactly. Make Pretend that you want your voice to bounce off the wall, whatever's in front of you. That's how far you want that voice to go.
And you could feel it if you're trying to talk in a big room or even, like, sometimes going out to dinner too and you're in a loud restaurant with a lot of music and stuff. Like, I noticed my voice gets tired because I didn't do any warm-ups, like, it's a conversation, it's dinner, and I'll be talking from the lungs and, like, the top
Yes.
half.
Yes. Clavicular breathing, chest breathing. It's when your shoulders are tight. And look, we all go through life with tight shoulders. We all just do. From the time you learn to walk, literally, your shoulders are tight when you talk, and that forces air just to your lungs in a very short span. I'm doing it now. You have to take more breaths, and that tightness forces your pitch up when all you need to do is drop your shoulders, breathe into your belly, and that pitch comes right down. The loose, relaxed shoulders. When my voice teacher taught me that 25 years ago, blown away. It's the key. Loose shoulders. Boom.
I think it's an awareness thing too. I can see the subtle difference, like, when you demonstrated it, just, like, I can hear it in your voice a tiny bit, but I notice it in myself too if I take early meetings at work and it's, the morning and my voice is kinda I'm waking up and I haven't had a lot of water or whatever, like, I can hear the fry or not quite the crispness of it. I can tell when I'm on, and then when I haven't really trained or warmed up my voice,
Right.
and so it's
Right.
an awareness thing too.
Yes. And that's part of what I do also is that until you hear it the best way and you're attuned to that, then you'll catch when you're not doing it. And that's an art because if you've not developed that pitch that comes up from the lower part of your diaphragm, you've never heard it, what you don't know what to listen for. And it always warms my heart when my clients will say, "Oh yeah, yeah," and then I caught myself doing this, so I dropped my shoulder. Yes, 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 you're hearing it. That's key.
Well, and speaking of hearing yourself and listening to yourself, I mean, I have to listen to myself a lot on the podcast and doing edits and such. How do you help people, if there's a way, to learn to like their voice or at least accept their voice?
We have to understand that the way you hear your voice is because of bone vibration that goes up from your jaw to your ear. And that's how you hear your voice. So that's what it sounds like to you, and you're okay with that. When you hear yourself back, having been recorded, you hear it differently because it enters your ears and then your brain a different way. So, of course, that's not what I sound like, is it? Well, to other
Mhm.
people, yes. It's like singing in the shower. You sound fabulous. I'm ready for Broadway. No, not so much really. So you just have to make peace with that. That can't change. But as long as you are incorporating your best pitch, learning to regulate your pace, pausing to allow your listeners or audience to catch up with you. And then I would also say, in terms of public speaking, if you were to ask any of the great TED Talk people, what's the number one most important thing about you making that TED Talk? And every single one of them will say to you, passion. Really?
Mm.
Yeah, passion. And so if all of those things are in alignment in your speech, when you hear it back, if that's what happens, and when you practice, you can always use your phone to record. You don't need to do it in front of a mirror. You don't need to do it into a camera. Really, you just need to do it into your phone. Just know that that is your best self, that is how you present to the world, but you've taken charge of all the things you can control. And you have to learn to control your reaction to the sound of your voice. Make peace with it. You just have to make peace. That's all you can do.
Take the jacket of judgment off and just make peace. This is what I sound like,
Yep.
and it's different from what I hear to what others hear. And also, I mean, I remember being younger, being like, "That's my voice, it's so deep. Everyone else has such lovely, like, feminine voices." We spoke about that earlier,
Yes,
but
we did.
just it's okay to have that lower female voice. It is
Sure is.
absolutely okay with
Yep.
that.
Yep. And I don't like always listening to my voice when I edit pieces and what have you. And I've been doing it for a really long time, but I made peace with it. And oh, I wish I could have. Enough with the shouldas and wouldas and couldas. Okay. You did it. You're done.
And to the pacing part too, sometimes when I'm in meetings, depending on the situation, I will rush my pacing because I don't wanna take up too much time, right? Like, I don't wanna fill the space too much. I
Hmm.
think this is a very female thing, not wanting to I said my piece and then that's it, but I'm gonna rush it so that way you just know that I understand that, like, time is valuable and I don't wanna take up the whole meeting, whatever. This is a previous thought. Now as a speaker, it's like, "Hey, I'm here. I'm gonna say my thought. I'm gonna say what I wanna say. Like, I've got the stage." But I think for a lot of people when they get up to speak, it's, "I need to say it quickly so that way I don't take up too much time or fill the space up too much." Does that make sense?
Interesting. I never thought of that. But if you're going too fast and the pace is too quick, they'll not have completely understood. So you might not as well have stood up.
Oh,
So,
absolutely, and you're not confident sounding. Yeah, it's
yes.
not a helpful thing, I'm just saying the psychology behind sometimes
Yes.
why I talk fast, and I have to stop myself and be like, "Why are you doing this? Why are you speaking faster? Like, why are you rushing right now?"
Good point. Good point.
Yeah,
Yeah, your time is valuable, but so is what you have to say.
yeah. Susan, I could talk to you all day, and,
Me
I've
too.
certainly tried, and, I hear you're doing a lot of things, you've got still a lot on your plate that you're doing. You're doing your business, you're a grandma, you're
Yeah.
also doing some voiceover work, right? Do you do voiceover work
I don't
still?
do as much of it as I used to. Back in the 90s, when phone tree systems had come into existence, I did a ton of that because the largest company in the world that did it was on Long Island, which is where I lived at the time. And I had some of the most high profile clients, American Express and Aer Lingus and Bank of America for a while. And I've had a lot of, but that's not done very often now. And phone trees for companies. Now, either artificial intelligence does it or somebody in their company does it because we've all
Mm,
gotten a lot more used to it. And then the computer age just mostly obliterated that for to a great degree. And I still do the occasional voiceover. I'm still the voice of WLIW, which is public television on Long Island. I still do some work for the city of New York. in one of their phone trees. Um,
Nice.
so I still do some, and if asked, I'll do a narration or whatever. And I love to do things now for smaller companies or not for profits, and then I donate my time to do it because it's paying it forward, giving it back. That's now what I like to do. And I was the voice for Fixodent denture cream for about 6 years. I was the dubbed TV voice for them. The woman was British and they needed an
Nice.
American voice. So I did that for 6 years and they finally changed the it was an unusual campaign. I was fall off dentures. I would be a little person in a big mouth. It was an unusual campaign, but it lasted 6 years. I mean, they changed same idea, but they changed the commercial. So it's time to let other folks do that. And the Emmy that I have is for narration of a documentary for public television. So
Oh,
I'm
nice.
more than happy to promote other careers and other people and to look back on mine very fondly. I wouldn't change a thing.
Well, you're doing wedding directing too.
Yes, I love it. It's like running a TV show. It really is. Between brides and grooms and mothers of the bride and
Oof,
groomsmen who've
yeah.
had a few too many things to drink. I mean, yeah, it's running back and forth and getting everybody down the aisle and making sure things are I love it. It's like producing a TV show. I love it.
So you're doing a ton of stuff. You've got a lot of different creative outlets, and this podcast is all about creative outlets and encouraging listeners to try new things. Hopefully, they heard some tips today on strengthening their voice and caring for their voice. How do you handle being a beginner at something new?
How do you oh, that's a great question. How do you well,
Because when you're new, you're not great at it, right? So then you're like, "Oh, I don't wanna keep doing it because 'cause I'm" like, sometimes if you pick up something you're, like, kind of, quote, unquote, "good at it," you're like, "Oh, well, that's easy, I'm gonna keep going." So how do you keep going if it's something new that maybe was a struggle at first?
we have to remember we've all been new at everything we do at some point. So
Exactly.
you've been new many times before, and I think you just have to go back to that. How did I master that? What allowed me to take the next steps? And sometimes they translate different things to memorize, like in terms of being a wedding director. And when, if the wedding is at 6 o'clock, between 5:30 and 6 is your best and worst half hour. So there are things you have to remember that have to go off exactly on time. And yeah, the first couple of weddings I did, it was a struggle. Nothing bad happened, but it was a struggle. But you just remember, I'll get better at this. They don't need to know it's only my second wedding that I'm directing here. So
Mm-mm.
you
Nope, you
you just
don't.
sort of pull confidence from something else that you did. I hate the expression fake it till you make it. I hate it. It's do it until it becomes muscle memory, which doesn't rhyme, so it's not cute, but just try to pull that confidence and keep going. And if you do fall, it's not the fall, it's how you recover from that fall. So, there was that one bride. One of my favorite things to do is to fluff her dress and veil right before we open the doors, and she gets down the aisle, and off she went, and her veil caught on some
Oh,
piece of
no.
metal on one side of the door,
Oh,
pulled the veil right
no.
off, pulled her veil right off her head. And
No.
she had a couple of choices, I'm sure, but she had a quarter of a second to decide, and she kept going. So, and then I quickly, got the veil and off I went. Now, the wedding video and those wedding photographs have her without a veil. She put the veil back on for the post-wedding pictures, and it was going to be a great story to tell her grandchildren. But she had to make that decision. Off you go. And do I run it down? No, no, no. She's going, I'm just going to take that veil and get it right back. So there you go.
I relate that to our podcasts. You said when you first came on the first podcast, it was maybe your second one that you did, which
Yeah.
was excellent, by the way. You were great. And it was also maybe my first year of podcasting too.
Yes.
So
Right.
my voice was a little unsupported as well. I wasn't trained. I hadn't been
Right.
coached by you yet.
Right.
So it is amazing, being new at something, you just kind of have to keep going and you get
And go
better and you
passion.
learn.
It's something new, it's something you wanna do, give it a little passion.
Give it passion. Yeah. That passion is what really helps. Like you said, with speaking, that passion brings it forward.
Right. It makes people want to watch, want to listen, want to hear what's next.
Last question for you, Susan. I usually ask this for all the guests here. This is improvly speaking. Improv is all about yes and having that yes and mindset or growth mindset. How do you embody a yes and or growth mindset in your life?
It took me a really long time. Yes, and because I was a yes, but person.
Mm,
And there are things that happen to you over the course of a life that are milestone moments, good and bad. And I think you're more likely to embrace yes and after you've had a few bad moments or bad things happen in your life.
challenging moments. Yeah.
Challenging. There you go. Because then you realize life's too short. There's more I could be doing if I only didn't limit myself. There's there's less I need to care about. It's taking off that jacket, to be perfectly honest with you. The jacket of judgment allows you to do yes and. Yes, but who is the and I can't think of her name who there's a little meme going around on Instagram. Don't walk through the world looking for reasons that you are not enough because you will find them.
Mm.
Stop
Mhm.
looking for them. Stop looking to put a but on the end of the sentence and do an and. And I think it takes life experience sometimes. You have to you have to hit the rough patches. You have to hit the challenges to make you realize there's more out there and I need to expand. And that's how I do it. And of course, when you become a grandmother, you've raised your children. For me, it was just one daughter.
Mhm.
There we go. And now the next generation is here, and it's yes and for Murphy B. It was yes but for Claire. So yeah, you'll find that out too eventually.
I am hoping to implement some skills of improv, the yes and mindset. Of course, still disciplining. You can't be all yes and, of
No, you
course.
can't. Mhm.
Yes and have some more candy. Why not? No, of course, there will be discipline, but just expanding that growth mindset. And you are enough, baby girl. You can do anything you want. You are enough. Don't limit yourself.
And let her hear it. A lot of us had to
Mhm.
figure it out on our own. So let her hear it.
And see it too in
And see it
females.
too.
And
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Susan, this has been an absolute joy. I think it was double the time of our original episode. We were about an
Oh,
hour, so
easy.
this
Oh,
was
sure. Yes. This has been
and
a divine joy, actually. The reason I got into radio is because radio in its infancy in the 20s and in going into the 30s, before the government and regulation became forward, people loved to eavesdrop on a good conversation. That's what
mhm,
radio's appeal was, that you could actually listen to a box and hear music, hear conversation, hear whatever. People love to listen to others. It's why we're fascinated by the royal family. It's why we're fascinated with true crime, because it's different and it's an intriguing and it doesn't have to be the royal family. Sometimes it can just be two friends who are talking about the things that resonate with every other person listening. And to be able to share that and to do that, I can't think of a better way to spend time. And I hope for our listeners, it has been a fun eavesdrop.
I like that. Yeah, podcasting is kind of like the next level of eavesdropping,
Yep.
kinda like radio, yeah.
And we don't have any constraints.
No constraints like radio where you need to go to ads and commercials or play
You can't
music,
use bad
no.
language, nope, not, nope. Anything goes.
We're a bit freer. I don't have all the animations or, like, sounds and "wah, wah, 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 wah,"
Yeah.
kind of sounds piping in like radio does, and that's okay. Susan, it was a lovely conversation. I've enjoyed it tremendously.
Me too.
What's next on your journey, and where and how can our listeners follow you on that journey?
Sure. A couple of ways. I'm on LinkedIn, Susan Murphy. There are a lot of Susan Murphys. Just go to Susan Murphy Voice Coach and you'll find all my information there. SusanMurphyVosat.com is my website. I'm on Instagram, Vosat, Better Broadcast Voices. Yeah, follow whatever you see in the links that are associated with the show here, and get in touch with me. And if there's a way I can, bring your voice to where it's truly you and you can step into the natural you, I'm all for it. And I'm not expensive, by the way. I work with young broadcasters who have no money, and I appreciate that. So, I'm not $5,000. Oh my goodness, heavens, no. So it is affordable. And if you think it can help build your confidence, come find me.
I hear, Susan, your dog barking in the
Yeah.
background. I don't know if it's coming in on the microphone or not. Usually the pets tell me when to wrap it up sometimes. So Kashmir is saying it's time to wrap it up, even though I don't want to say goodbye. But
Not either.
honestly, such a joy, such an absolute pleasure to just chat with you again, Susan. You've helped me tremendously, and you probably didn't even realize it over the past 2 years. I hope you could I think you said you could hear the difference. I
I
can hear the
absolutely can.
difference.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
so
what do you say we talk again when baby girl is about a year old?
I think that is a great idea. Let's do it, and then I won't have any
Calendar.
excuse for anything in the way of my diaphragm, so I can't use any excuses at that point.
Right. Right, right, right. Yep.
Thank you so much, Susan. So grateful, and, go feed Kashmir.
I will.
And thank you for listening to today's episode with Susan Murphy. Oh my gosh, she's such a dream to listen to, and I'm really impressed. Of course, I've spoken with Susan before, I've worked with her, but her voice is just so engaging and enthralling. And she could be talking about anything, and it just draws you in. And it's really from that strengthened voice, that confident, authentic voice that she's talking from. And she really does just talk to you in that voice, like whether it's a conversation or being on a podcast or TV or a show. Like she really does have that kind of commanding voice. And I say commanding that where it is authoritative, like she's confident in what she's saying, but it's also approachable and natural and authentic. And I use the word approachable hesitantly. I think I said that in the episode. And what I mean by approachable is like I want to listen in and I'm not turned off by she's not lecturing, right? It's not authoritative in the style of lecturing or very higher status role. And I say higher status in improv, we have like high status and low status characters that we can play in scenes. And the high status tend to be very authoritative voices and, know what they want kind of things, or very lecturing and this is what you should do. And I have all the answers. And so it's not that that's not Susan's voice at all, but it's a balance of just confident and engaging, passionate, very passionate, right? You can tell Susan's very passionate about what she's doing and what she's helping people with. And I just so enjoyed this episode. I hope you got a lot out of it. I have to tell you, working with Susan for the brief time that I did, I'm telling you, we did 2 to 3 sessions. We emailed back and forth a few times. She sent me some tips and things to work on. But really, the big thing for me was having that pre routine, that pre speaking, pre performance routine, which I guess we didn't kind of elaborate on. But if Susan's okay with me sharing, it involves a mixture of doing some simple neck stretches, like side to side, and then shoulder rolls forward and backwards. And then maybe I added this, maybe this was part of her stretching too, but like raising up the shoulders, kind of tensing and then releasing, letting go of some of that stress. I love the reminder of drop your shoulders, drop your shoulders. It's so helpful. It's such a helpful cue. And then there's a minute of breathing through your mouth. Inhale for a 4 count. So inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then exhale for 6 count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You repeat that for about a minute or however long you have. You can add more to this routine. I did ask Susan if she's changed it up a bit. She said she had a few different things. So please contact her to work with her. Like she said, she's very affordable, very helpful too. She just wants to see you succeed. As she said, she had her career, she loved it, she wouldn't change anything about it, and she wants to help the next generation of people coming up in their careers to have just the best careers possible and succeed as well. I love that abundance mindset of giving back and helping people, and Susan has absolutely helped me. I have shared this pre-speaking, pre-performance routine with my coworkers, with friends, with people who I work with in coaching too. It's so helpful to have a pre-performance routine. It doesn't have to be exactly what I just said. I've kind of taken what Susan's given me, I've made it my own, and that's the key is you just have to find what works for you. Sometimes I don't have a whole lot of time to do the it sounds so silly. I don't have 5 minutes to do the pre-speaking routine, but sometimes I'll do it, but then maybe you're giving a speech or presentation or whatever, and you're in the audience. So you can't quite do the whole, like, settle in, get in a quiet space, like, you're in the midst of everything. But what I was telling Susan before we recorded is what I love about that minute of breathing is I can be in the midst of the room waiting for my turn to give the presentation or an improv show. I can be waiting for our turn to get up on stage to perform, and I can do that minute of breathing and no one notices, right? Because it's just me sitting there. I drop my shoulders. I inhale through my mouth, 4 count, exhale through my mouth for a 6 count. And I can repeat that as long as I have. And it really does just help calm the nerves right before I get on stage. Of course, it is better if you're in a quiet place and you can do a full reset. But even if you don't have that time and space, all good, you can still sit there and do it for a minute. How powerful and helpful is that? And I can tell a difference when I don't do it versus when I do it. So I want to encourage you, find your pre-speaking, pre-performance routine, make it your own, and actually commit to doing it. And then you'll find maybe there's times where you don't get the chance to, you still have that level of preparation, and then you're okay to maybe skip it a few times because you've already practiced it, and then you've already embodied that confidence, and you know how to tap into it right away when you get on stage. You know, I mentioned in the beginning about how Susan and I met and how she came on my previous podcast, and we never released it because things changed, life got in the way. Again, no drama. I know everyone wants a little bit of drama, like, "Oh, what happened?" Literally, there was no drama. It was just I wanted to go solo, and we just never really kept up with the shared podcast that we had. And I mentioned to Susan after again, I said, "I'm so sorry. I hate that we didn't release it. It was such a good episode. Again, just we used up an hour of your time. I'm so sorry." And I also said, "I think this one was double that episode because that one was around an hour or so. This one's a little longer." And she's so nice. And she said, "Look, you've got to just release that guilt. There's so much that gets in the way. There's so much that happens in life. We have our highs and lows, and honestly, not releasing an episode is not the lowest of lows." Things happen, she understood, and I just wanna share that with you all because I'm in a lot of podcast Facebook groups. I like to hear what other podcasts are doing, and I remember someone posted on one of the Facebook groups, like, "Oh, I did an episode with someone and they never released it, and I've emailed them and they won't respond, and I don't understand why. I thought it was a good episode and I'm not getting any feedback about it. And people commented and shared different things. And really, my response to that is just sometimes it's not even about you or the episode. Like sometimes the episode was great, just things happen and get in the way. With podcasters, you know, a lot of us are doing this on our own time, on our own passions, and things can happen. They might have a baby or things come up and for whatever reason, it just doesn't get released. So it doesn't mean that the episode was bad, that you were bad, that anything went wrong, or that you did anything wrong. It is most likely external circumstances. And I can relate that to public speaking in a lot of aspects of life. I know I give speeches a ton. I give a ton of presentations that I get absolutely no feedback on. I don't hear if it's good, if it was helpful or bad. When I do my own presentations, I do a survey, I will ask for feedback. I certainly want to hear people's thoughts and suggestions on how I can make improvements. I'm always trying to improve and make my content better. However, you do things sometimes where you just don't get any feedback, and that can really put you in your head to be like, "Was it me? Did I do something wrong?" Even improv shows, I mean, a lot of times, like, you don't get a ton of feedback if your coach isn't there, or maybe you don't debrief with your team. It depends on kind of the rules you've set as your team, like what kind of debriefing you want to do. And so you can just feel so in your head of like, "Oh, I messed this up," or "I did this wrong," or I just so relate to that. And your wheels can spin and it can go towards the negative. So I share all this with you to just say, if you haven't heard anything or you don't get a whole lot of feedback, as long as you feel good about it, then trust that it went well. That's been my motto recently in presentations, in podcasts, in episodes, and anything I do business wise, even posting on social media. Like, if I feel good about it and I enjoy it and I had fun doing it, then it was probably good. It was probably great. And I don't even mean to label things as good or bad. Like, it probably went well. And I don't need external feedback to know that or feel that. I can trust in my own gut when I recognize that things went well and say, "Yeah, I enjoyed that." I don't need my ego to hear from others how good it was. I internally can tell myself, "That was good. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I was passionate. It went well." And then move on. Just a little nugget there. Lots of ways to relate that. In this episode, Susan and I talked a lot about a lot of things, but also a lot about strengthening your voice and having that stronger voice, that authentic voice that is your own, and not speaking from a higher level pitch or even lower level, or not trying to do too much, just being your full authentic voice. And so I want to turn it over to you and ask, are you aware of your voice changes, of your vocal strength? Do you recognize when you're kind of trailing off the cliff? Maybe ending your sentences with unsupported breath. That's what it means. So when you might be speaking for a while and then all of a sudden you end it, but you don't have any air left. So it's not as strong at the end. Or on the flip side, ending in a question mark, even though you didn't ask a question. So you end in kind of a higher pitch. And that kind of signals that you're unsure, but you also didn't ask a question there. And so are you aware of these very slight differences? Are you aware when you're speaking with unsupported breath? It can happen to a lot if you're speaking a lot. I notice sometimes when I do these podcasts and then I do the kind of outro recordings, it's like sometimes I'm tired of talking or I've been speaking a lot, so the voice doesn't sound as strong too. And so really the key piece is being aware of it first. Being aware of how often you're speaking with unsupported breath, how that could be perceived or show up to. And I don't even mean to really focus on the judgment piece of others. It's really your voice can show a level of confidence in speaking, in improv. I didn't say this in the episode, but I was thinking about this too, at least in my improv skills. I've heard the term gray spacing, and I think what it is, if I can explain it correctly, it is where you might not actually know what's going on, but let's say you're trying to say someone's name or you're saying where you're adding to, or you're giving a gift, and you just say it naturally. And that's kind of filling that gray space. And it's essentially choosing to know. So it's choosing to know that my name's Martha and your name's Luke. And together we're going on this mystery hunt for a missing cat. And you say it with such certainty that it is true now because I didn't have to go, my name is Martha, and yours is Luke. It's more the gray spacing and choosing to know. My name's Martha, your name's Luke. Together, we're going to find this missing cat. Done, right? Then we can add to it, we can add to the scene. And so having your voice be in control there and also trusting your skills, letting go of judgment, not being in your head and being in the moment. There's so many things that go into it. But having that strong voice can help you to gray space better because then you say it with such certainty, the audience will believe you more. And you'll believe yourself more, and your scene partner will believe you more. You can be a better actor and improviser too along the way. So the voice really can help in improv and speaking. It helps everywhere. And the key is to be aware of it. I am very aware of it when I'm speaking, when I'm podcasting, when I'm in meetings too, for the most part, especially if it's a more quote unquote important meeting. But honestly, anytime you're speaking, you should try to warm up your voice. But I have noticed in improv when I play characters, no matter the status, higher status, lower status, different characters, whatever, I've got that slight bit of uncertainty still. I'm not quite gray spacing quick enough. I'm not choosing to know quick enough. And the audience can tell that. I am new to improv. I'm 4 years in my improv journey. I'm still learning. I'm getting there. It's all good. It is an awareness tool, and it is something I can do to grow, develop, and get better. And that is wonderful. So I want to encourage you, check out Susan's offerings. Even if you're not in broadcasting, I know that is maybe a niche industry. Maybe that's something you're not a part of. I am not in the broadcast industry at all. I don't think podcasting counts as the broadcasting industry. And I still worked with Susan, and it was so helpful. Check out her website, Susan Murphy Vosot. Check out her Instagram, LinkedIn. She's such a helpful resource. And also, you can follow me on Instagram at Improvly Speaking. On LinkedIn, I'm at Dayna Gowan. And then my website is improvryspeaking.com. I mentioned that we are recording this when I'm 8 months pregnant. So when this comes out, baby girl will be here, hopefully happy and healthy. And mama here is happy and healthy too, and recovering, and we're all recovering and doing well. And so I say that all to say is I have no idea what will be going on in the business. At that point, I do intend to keep the podcast going. I have batch recorded everything. The podcast is really important to me, and I want to keep it going, and I want to keep the momentum going as well. I really enjoy this. This is my passion. I love talking with people. So all that to say is I don't know what will quite be going on for me at this point when this episode gets released, but please follow me on Instagram at Improvly Speaking, on LinkedIn at Dayna Gowan, and then you can find out more about my services and offerings coming up on my website at improvryspeaking.com. One last reminder and cue to Drop your shoulders, take a few deep breaths before you present, speak, get up on stage, do your improv show, go to dinner with a friend in a loud bar and restaurant. Drop your shoulders, relax, and allow that confident, natural voice to take over, and notice the difference when it does. Thank you so much for listening and supporting Improvly Speaking. I also want to remind you and encourage you to say yes and go out and flex your creative thinking. I'll talk to you next time.